smart metering program with you today. I'd like to walk you through, in general, sort of why we are upgrading the grid, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the benefits of the program, and I'll try to answer some of the commonly asked questions along the way. And then, of course, at the end, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. You know, electricity is one of those things that we often don't think about, and because we don't think about it, we often take for granted the fact that it actually supports our economy and our quality of life in BC. You know, it powers our homes, it powers our industries. Industries over the last 50 years have become more and more electricity intensive. If you think about mining and milling, manufacturing, our commercial businesses have become more electricity intensive. If you, I know when there's a power outage, many stores can't conduct business anymore because their systems are automated. And of course it powers our infrastructure, so our telecommunications, our hospitals, our airports, and our transportation systems. So because we don't think about it a whole lot, people often don't realize what it actually takes to deliver electricity here in British Columbia. We have a very, very large province. It's very diverse in terms of geography, and our population is very dispersed. Most of our generation facilities are in the north and the east of the province. We've got about 41 dams. We have enough wire in our system to almost wrap the globe twice. We've got about 260 substations, one control center in the Fraser Valley, and all of that ends in about 1.9 million meters. We've been relying on this infrastructure for over 50 years to deliver reliable power to British Columbia. But our investments in this infrastructure simply have not kept up with the demands that are being placed on the grid today. The collective societal choices that we have made that require electricity are here, and the grid simply has not kept up. We need to do a significant upgrade in order to meet demand and meet demand safely. In addition, we're expecting electricity demand to increase by about 50% over the next 20 years. Our economy in British Columbia continues to grow. It's a very desirable place for people to live, and it continues to add demand to our grid. The smart metering program is a bit of a misnomer. Often people think it's just about exchanging meters. This is actually a full-scale grid upgrade. Moving to a more efficient grid will help to save on our side of the grid, translating into keeping your rates low. The cost of the program is $930 million. It will deliver $1.6 billion in savings over the next 20 years. And those $1.6 billion in savings are what's going to help keep rates low. It more than pays for itself, reducing our operating costs. And if we save money, you save money, because we're a cost of service utility. We only charge what it costs us to serve you.
California, USA.
The program, we are a Crown Corporation, and the program has a number of pieces to it to help ensure that we can deliver reliable power in British Columbia. As I said, it's a bit of a misnomer. This is not just about exchanging meters. This is about upgrading our electricity system to meet demand. The program does include exchanging the old meters for new meters that have a lot more functionality. Today we're operating the grid with a system that's similar to the rotary phone. This is moving us into a more automated system, more like a BlackBerry. The program includes meters. It includes the back-end infrastructure and data networks to actually manage the data coming from the meters. It also includes system metering. Many people don't realize this, but today we operate our grid blind beyond the substations. That means we can't actually see what's going on beyond that. We can't measure it, we can't manage it. It'll also help us to manage electricity flow much like an inventory system in a store. We'll be able to manage the flow of electrons throughout the entire grid, because we'll have meters on the system where they've never been before. It includes providing our customers with more information about their electricity consumption. The data that we collect about your hourly consumption will be made available to you through a secure online web portal so that you can monitor your use and you can see what your power consumption is at any given hour. Only you will know what that's from. It also includes moving our electricity system from a one-way delivery system to a two-way delivery system. So if you remember the map I showed you in the beginning, we had a bunch of big generation in the north and the east. that sends electricity one way to our customers. Well, the types of technology we're adding to the grid today require two-way transfer of electricity, and our current grid simply cannot handle that. Things like electric vehicles to make our transportation systems greener, solar panels, customer generation, so that customers can actually become their own producers of electricity to meet their needs and put excess back onto the grid. All of that requires the two-way transfer of electricity. So this is a fairly comprehensive scope. It's actually one of the most comprehensive smart metering program scopes in North America. We took a very long time to develop this program and make sure that it actually met all of the needs that we have today and into the future. The first benefit that I'd like to talk about is increasing public safety. We are currently exchanging every meter in the province, and when we do that, we pull the meter out of the customer's meter socket. You can see the middle picture there is a meter socket with the meter pulled out. When we do that, we'll do an inspection on the wiring of that meter socket. That is the customer's equipment. Normally, if there are any repairs that are required to be done to the meter socket, the customer is responsible for those costs. Because we are changing out every meter in the province, we will inspect every meter box, and if it requires repair, with the customer's consent, we are fixing those. We've done over 800 of those so far to date, out of the 1.3 million meters that we've installed. In addition, the new meters provide more surge protection than the old meters. The new meters provide up to 575 volts. The old meters were about 380 volts. The new meters contain a tamper protection device, so that if the meter is pulled from the socket, it will actually send us a message, and we will investigate why that is. Today we have a lot of meter tampering, some of it very dangerous, and nobody should actually pull a meter without approval from BC Hydro and the BC Safety Authority. In fact, it's illegal to do so. That said, it does happen. And if it does happen, we're responsible for delivering safe power, and we need to ensure that that's done in a way that's up to codes and standards, so we will investigate that. The fourth way that it protects public safety is actually the reduction of electricity theft. Today, electricity theft around British Columbia is growing. We work with the RCMP on this issue. We are not a law enforcement agency. What they tell us is that the scale of grow-ops in this province is increasing dramatically. You're seeing a lot less small mom-and-pop grow-ops, and you're seeing a lot more big operations. The way big operations steal electricity is not by tampering with the meter. They do it by splicing into our primary distribution lines. And then what they do is they take those wires, they cut grooves down the back of wooden poles, they run the wires down shallowly underground to wherever that power needs to go. We've got live poles, we've got live ground. It's extremely dangerous. We need to address this problem. These new meters throughout our grid will actually help us to detect where electricity is going missing, and it will help us make things a lot more difficult for people who are trying to steal. Stealing electricity is also a problem because it's actually stealing revenue, and that affects all of our rates. In fact, it's about the equivalent of about $100 million a year in lost revenue that we are all subsidizing because it simply lost electricity from the system. These, just back to some of the things that are happening on the grid, it's also a very, it's a cost-intensive replacement program for us because we're having to replace infrastructure regularly. On the left, there's a set of transformers. On the right, there's an infrared scan of those transformers. The one in the middle is actually pulling through a lot more electricity than it was sized for. That's what happens when a grow-up hooks up to the grid. Our infrastructure has to be sized to manage the load, and if it's not, these things are full of hot oil, they overheat, and when they overheat, they blow up. And this is what happens. This happens hundreds of times around the province. This happens in residential neighborhoods. It's extremely dangerous. It's also a great concern to the fire department. The other thing we're finding with grow-ops, and as we go around and change meters out, is that we have come across a number of residences that have bypasses in place that were undetected at the time of sale or the time the customer actually rented that premise. And so we're fixing those situations as well. Extremely dangerous. Those situations could be a potential fire hazard. In fact, the provincial fire chief has said that a grow-up is 25 times more likely to catch fire than a regular residence, and this endangers the homes around them. So we are doing our very best to address the safety issues on the grid and to work with the RCMP to put a stop to this. We have tested, I know some folks don't believe that we can actually find grow-ups. We have a number of other tools that I haven't mentioned, and I won't for obvious reasons. But this is a pilot that we ran in an area of the province, and we found that 45% of the electricity that was being sent into an area was going missing. What we discovered from that it was due to 5 grow-ups. Another benefit of having a grid that actually provides more information about its status is outage detection. So I know out here our nearest office is in Vernon. If there's an outage out here and not everybody calls us, what happens is we'll send a truck to fix what we thought was the problem based on whoever has called us. We don't always get it. The truck will drive back to Vernon only to get more calls. Then we send the truck out again to fix whatever's remaining. This never happens during good weather, and it never happens during business hours. It's a very dangerous process to have people out in bad weather conditions looking for faults on the grid and driving around neighborhoods to check for lights back on because that's the only way they know power is restored. And then having to go back out again. It's a very costly process as well. And like I said, every penny we spend on this kind of thing gets factored into your rates. With the new system, we will know immediately when the power is out. Every single meter has a capacitor on board that sends us a signal that basically shows up much like this and tells us the exact location of the outage and the exact number of people that are affected by it. We will dispatch our crews and they will not come back until that is actually restored. This is an actual screenshot of our control system. This is an outage in Latner on November 24th where we had a severe winter storm, and it shows you exactly what we see in our control center. The other thing that happens today is that often customers will call us and they'll think their power is out, and we will dispatch a truck to go and check. It often is that the meter is actually still getting power, but they've got a breaker problem. Maybe their breaker has flipped. Today, you and I are all paying for those outage calls. In the future, we will actually be able to check and see if the meter actually has power, saving on sending those trucks out needlessly. One of our sister utilities in Texas has reported over 95% reductions in the number of times they have to send trucks out for outage and false outage calls. Significant savings there, and we've seen it in real cases. The other way that the system will help to reduce costs is, if you remember earlier I was saying that we're blind beyond our substations today. With the new system, we will have meters, transformers and feeder meters throughout our grid, enabling us to manage and measure the flow of electricity through the grid. Remember, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So today what we do is we send way more electricity than we need to try and ensure you have enough. If you don't have enough voltage, your lights will flicker. Has anybody seen that here? So we actually can't get the exact right amount, and what happens is a significant amount of waste. With this new system, these meters measure power quality factors in addition to hourly consumption, and we will actually be able to check the voltage of your meter remotely. So we will know if you're getting enough power or not, and we will be able to target sending you the exact right amount. This will will save a significant amount of electricity within the system. So those are the things that happen on our side of the grid. And in fact, if customers don't change a single thing about what they're doing, this program will more than pay for itself. If customers decide to participate in this program, we're going to provide some tools so that you can. So we'll provide you with the hourly information that we collect from the meter. We collect it 3 times a day, so every 8 hours, basically a radio inside the meter will send the data back to BC Hydro, and then every day we will upload it onto your secure website. So the data is a day old when we get it, and you won't have real-time data from that, but you'll have the previous day back, and it's enough information for you to know how what you were doing at that time of day affected your consumption. We'll also provide you with PowerSmart tips. We are not introducing time of day rates in BC, but we are going to continue to ask you to use less and find ways to use less, and we'll help support you to do that. We'll offer you things like instant outage notifications. Say you're at work and the power is off in your premise. Well, now we're going to know before you do, and if you want it, you'll be able to get an immediate outage notification on your email or your Twitter account or your Facebook account or however you choose, so that maybe you don't want to go home for dinner that night. Maybe you're going to make other arrangements. If you've got animals at home that need to be taken care of, then you know what's going on. So those are all service options that you will have once this system is up and running. Often people ask if we can tell what you're doing and when you're doing it. We simply can't. We're not collecting that granular level of data. In fact, these meters are not capable of collecting that data. What they do is they collect hourly information, they store it on a chip inside the meter, and every 8 hours they send it to us. Basically, the information that you will see on the website will look similar to this, only it'll say by the hour. This is actually one of our employees who basically let us collect data from their meter. And only that person knows if that spike is the big screen TV or the furnace kicking in or the hot tub or maybe the kids on the Game Boy. The other thing that I often hear from people is they love the fact that they could check their vacation property remotely and see if there's, anyone's using the lights in there. Some people like the idea to monitor their teenage kids. How you use it is up to you, but this information will be available to you, and it's exactly what we're collecting. I'd like to address the radio frequency element of the meter. I do get a lot of questions about that. The meters use a 900 megahertz radio. They communicate for less than a minute a day. In fact, they've been independently tested by an engineering firm who has signed and sealed the report. And the report confirms that the meters actually communicate for 2.74 seconds over a 48-hour period. We say a minute a day because we never want to be wrong, and we want to make sure that in any kind of rare instance, we've given people the right information. The power that the meter communicates with is about 1/5 the power of a handheld radio. It's 2 microwatts per centimeter square. It's actually 50% below the strictest regulation in the world based on precautionary limits for sensitive areas like schools and hospitals. We have been challenged by customers to not use Safety Code 6 as a reference. There was a lot of discussion around that. And so we found the strictest standard in the world, and we have confirmed independently by certified engineers that our meters are below that. And in fact, if you took our outside estimate that the meter communicates for 1 minute a day, and you stood next to the meter for 20 years, it would be the equivalent of having a 30-minute cell phone call. You'd have to stay there the whole time because the signal drops off exponentially with distance. That's at the outside. If you compare it to Wi-Fi, basically 4 minutes of Wi-Fi is the equivalent to 1 year of a smart meter. I did notice when I was on the street outside, there are 3 active Wi-Fi networks if you're just standing on the street, and there is actually 1 active Wi-Fi network here in your meeting room. In terms of what customers can expect, we are about 60% complete in this area. So you will have seen an ad in the paper. Customers would have all received an individually addressed letter explaining the process. That happens about 3 weeks before the meter exchange. And then once the meter exchange takes place, we provide a door hanger that provides more information about the program. In terms of status of the program, we have installed over 1.3 million meters to date. The full project installation of 1.85 million plus meters is actually on target for completion at the end of this year. We are active in a number of communities around the province at the same time, and the program we're on schedule. And with that, I'll go to questions. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay, what I would propose we do is I'll start with a question and then we can just go around for each counselor. So my first question, Previously, council had asked Hydro not to install meters in Enderby until we had this presentation. Could you explain why Hydro didn't respect that request?
We have, I believe we did offer to come and speak in April, and I do have the record for that. But the bottom line is that BC Hydro has to work with each customer on an individual basis. We're like Visa or MasterCard or your Shaw or Rogers. We can only work with the individual customer when it comes to making decisions about their account. So it's not possible for a municipality or a neighbor or a third party to make a decision about a customer's account. So we've done our best to try to get to communities around the province and provide information, and we're pleased to be here today. We had hoped to come here sooner.
Yep. Councilor Ludwig?
People are concerned about house fires. Is there, that are caused by the smart meters? Is that a possibility?
There's absolutely no incidents of house fires being caused by a meter. Let me tell you how this meter works. First of all, this is a measurement device. It doesn't carry a charge. Basically what happens is the power comes in through the top, it gets measured, and it comes out through the bottom. There's absolutely no way that these two connectors can come in contact with each other. What we are finding as we go around the province and pull these off, that there are sometimes wiring problems on the customer side. So our grid ends here. This plugs into the customer's wiring. So you have a meter box that we actually plug this into to deliver power to you. What happens is often, people don't, and it's hard to do this, but people often don't check their wiring. Sometimes we're finding that work has been done on a house that hasn't been done to standard or code. We're finding, that there's been, some cases there's been wiring that has been designed to bypass the meter. There's a lot of different things that we're finding around the province as we pull this off, and we're fixing those. Like I mentioned earlier, we've done over 800 meter socket repairs for customers free of charge by qualified electricians. And so we're doing our very best to address pre-existing problems on the grid. The bottom line is we're not always going to find every single one of those, but we are working hard to make sure that the grid is a safer place.
Okay.
And do we have the right to choose whether we have a smart meter put in or not?
The smart meters are necessary to deliver power to homes and businesses in BC. And as I mentioned earlier, the collective decisions that society has made about what they're plugging into the grid today has basically resulted in us needing to upgrade the grid to match the demand. There are very few ways in which we can do that in British Columbia. Some of the parameters that we have to work within are numerous regulations and legislation that are governed by the North American grid, so we have to meet all those requirements. Anything that we purchase has to go through an open public tender. So what we did is we laid out our needs, so based on what the grid basically needed to be able to deliver, and we put it out to open procurement. We did not specify the type of technology. We were technology agnostic. We didn't get one single proposal that was not wireless. And the reasons for that are our topography, our diverse population, and we have a pre-existing grid that we need to build on. So unlike many other jurisdictions, for example, Italy, every transformer in our province has about 8 customers on it. In Italy, they have 80. So it's very different in terms of the type of technology we can use to deliver the power. And so there are differences that many people might not realize in terms of how we manage and operate the grid and the standards that we have to meet to do so.
Is that a yes or a no?
Yeah.
That's a
Yes
no.
or no.
Yes or no.
That was kind of mine, but I was just wondering if you did have a smart meter, what are your options if you wanted to get it removed? Or if you move into a rental house that has one and you don't
Once a
want it?
smart meter has been installed, we will not take it out.
So can we take it out?
No.
We should have a choice.
Can you just explain, like, if one was to go look at one of those meters in operation, you just in your data says that it operates for less than a minute over the 24-hour period. Can you just explain what the people would see on an active one? Because it looks like it's either downloading or reloading about every 15 seconds.
Yep, I can explain that. So there's two radios on board. One of them is turned off and will remain turned off unless the customer asks us to turn it on. And that's one that can communicate into the home by reading right off the meter. That's for your eyes only if you want it. The second radio that provides the information back to BC Hydro, the 900 megahertz one, it basically every 8 hours will send a data packet to basically a router. The router will be located on an existing pole, so it'll send that data package to the router 3 times a day. And then from the router, it uses whatever backend system is available. It could be cellular, it could be ADSL, it could be satellite. Whatever's in the area, we're not adding new infrastructure where we don't have to. The meter will also send signals to ensure that it's connected to the network. So it is part of a network. If there's a moving truck that's parked in front of the meter will reroute through another meter and go to the collector. All in, that's the 2.74 seconds over 48 hours. We've also just completed a study by independent engineers that will also be signed and sealed that looks at a meter bank of 50 meters, and it's very, very similar. Because they work collectively, the bottom line is that the meter bank is marginally more in terms of communication time than a single meter.
So,
Does that answer your question?
roundaboutly, so as the number changes, it is similar to the old dial moving, is that?
You mean in terms of reading the
Yeah,
power on the meter?
if you're looking at the actual display.
Oh, if you're looking at the display, what you'll see is it'll cycle through different displays.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it does that is because it's actually measuring power quality factors in addition to your consumption. So the screen that you want to read to see your consumption will be the one that says kilowatt hours. And so you just watch for that screen. And the numbers will increase as you consume more power. So if you go inside your house and turn everything on, and go outside and look at the meter, that number will be going up quickly. And if you go in and turn everything off and go back, it'll go up slowly or not at all. One of the things people don't realize though is that even if you've got your power off, if you've got stuff plugged in, it does draw on the system.
Just one more quick one. So the fear that people have for the increase in bills and whatever, what can you say for that?
Well, you know, BC is one of the few jurisdictions that has chosen not to implement time-of-day rates along with the new metering infrastructure. And I think that's created a lot of confusion for people because, you know, it's basically British Columbia and Quebec that aren't, and almost every other jurisdiction has. And so that's created a perception that when you get your meter, your bill's going to go up. The reality is it doesn't change, and in fact we have continued to read our meters manually, and we will do so until our metering contract runs out. And through that process we will be reading manually and we'll be checking with the meter reads and we'll be reconciling that to ensure the system is working perfectly. It should be absolutely seamless for customers. That said, like the old meters, some of these meters will break. We have seen a handful of cases where that's been the case. There was one customer where we had to correct a bill because of that, but it's a very rare circumstance, and it's not unlike any other meter. In fact, we have actually been replacing 40,000 meters a year that fail, and those are the old ones. It happens.
So as far as the time of day billing also, I know you haven't really said that because that's not up to you to say that, but the government has said that that won't happen.
The reason that we're not going to time of day billing is that in BC, and Quebec's in a similar position, is that we've got 93% hydropower. So unlike other jurisdictions, Quebec has 96. Unlike other jurisdictions, we can actually store electricity behind the dam. And that allows us to regulate the flow of water to meet our needs. The other thing that we do in British Columbia is we take advantage of the fact that our neighbors to the east actually use, they are forced, they don't have the luxury of hydropower, and they're often forced to ramp up coal-fired or gas-fired plants to meet their peak demand. Once they've met their peak, that plant doesn't ramp down quickly, and so they end up with a whole bunch of excess electricity. What we do is we buy it at ridiculously low rates, cheaper than we can produce it ourselves, and we hold our water. And we manage our system very effectively that way. One more thing I'll add to that, because it is an important part of that question, is that we currently have underway a public consultation program that's called Integrated Resource Planning, and that's where people have an opportunity to provide input into the types of electricity sources that we use into the future. We're expecting 50% increase of electricity over the next 20 years, and this is the opportunity to help identify which sources people would like us to be using.
So you said that you will not be uninstalling the smart meters that have been installed.
That's correct.
So now, the people that have asked for no smart meters, at what point, like, what are you going to do? What is your plan?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is make sure that we can talk to those customers and provide information to them. We have found that we've had thousands of customers who originally had concerns that have changed their mind and accepted the meter. And so our first priority is making sure customers have the facts about the program. We are accountable for the information that we provide to the public, and we're working hard to ensure people have the facts. The program is set to wrap up at the end of the year, and so I can tell you that the concern that we have is that if we have to maintain dual systems, there is a cost to that, and it's not just the cost of reading the meter. There are a number of costs that will be associated with that, and we are trying to ensure that those costs don't get transferred to the customers who have accepted their meters. And so I know there's a possibility that at the end of the year, once this program is complete, the customers that don't have a meter may have to pay additional costs.
It's probably still going to work out cheaper.
Question I have was,
Either in, they're going to rate.
the BC Utilities Commission has an oversight committee.
Yes.
And was they were apprised of what you guys wanted to do before this was done?
Absolutely. The BCUC, we have engaged them from the start. This program is not exempt from BCUC scrutiny. In fact, we submit them a quarterly report that could be available to the public, I'm sure, if you requested it. It basically provides a status of the project overall every quarter. And when this program is complete, every single penny that we spend will be scrutinized by the BC Utilities Commission.
Another question I have. So you guys probably have a pretty good idea how much power you expect to save.
We do.
Any chance that might hold up or stop Site C being done, project being started?
Well, the challenge we have, and the reality is, and back to the integrated resource planning, the first and best option for meeting new supply is conservation. It's the cheapest option. It's part of what this program delivers. It will help us on the grid side, and if customers participate, that's going to help a lot too. And so part of the answer is it depends. The program alone will save about 14,000 gigawatt hours over 20 years. That's enough to power about 74,000 homes a year or so, so it's substantive. If customers show up and they're able to use the new data that we're providing them, studies show that customers can save up to 15%. That's a lot of electricity. If everybody in BC could do that, that would be fantastic. And so if we can save, that means we have to buy less and we have to build less. The reality is part of the growing economy that we enjoy here in BC is it requires electricity to power it.
So that is a mandate from Hydro to help the greater community save time.
Absolutely. We will continue to provide customers with information and tools to help them conserve. We've been doing that for over 20 years. We're well known around the world for it, and we're going to continue to do it. And customers have done a fantastic job with not very great information. I mean, what you get today, you get a bill every 2 months. One of those bills that you get, every second bill is probably an estimate because we don't get out to read every meter every billing cycle. And so you're not getting very good information. It's analogous to going to the grocery store or getting your car filled up with gas and getting a bill every 2 months. You're using this in real time, but the time lag is a couple months, if not more. We know that if customers have more timely information, they can see what did it cost you to do the home renos on the weekend? There's a lot of things that people become much more aware of. People automatically notice when I show them that graph that it never goes to zero, and they ask why. And so just that increasing awareness can go a long way to saving. And if we can do that, then that means buy less and build less.
increased rates.
Earlier this month, one meter installed in Enderby, the first 6 days of reading showed the same power consumption as the previous 2 months. So when a person phoned with the hydro, what should hydro be responsible?
I would hope that person has contacted us.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that case. If-
Well, but what would the normal response be?
If anybody has a concern about their bill, or that their meter is not operating properly, they should contact us, and I have a number here that I can provide
Yeah,
you.
but, okay, but they've done that, what should hydro, how would hydro respond to that?
I would need more information about the case, so I'm not
Well,
clear on,
Okay, well,
I'm not clear what the question is,
well, all
maybe
of
you
a
can help me
sudden,
out.
the new meter is showing 10 times the consumption of the old meter.
Yeah,
So if hydro's informed, will they come out and test the meter, or?
there's a whole process that they go through to look at that. There are a number of steps.
Could you just quickly?
The first thing that somebody, and I mean, obviously the person on the other end of the phone will collect more information than I have right now. But the first thing that happens when a customer calls in to have their bill checked is the customer service representative will have a look at their account, and they'll look at their previous consumption history for the same period. If it shows that there is a significant jump in consumption, then they'll go through a process with them. We've had cases like that where we've looked at, we haven't been able to figure it out over the phone, so we have sent someone out to the customer's premise. Some of these cases were in the media. One of them was a lady who had just installed a hot tub over Christmas. And of course her consumption had jumped dramatically. And when we did the breaker test, we found that that was the cause. So there's a number of different things that can happen, and the meters can break too. So if what happens is that if there's something really unusual happening, we'll usually do a field test. We'll usually send someone out to the property if we can't figure it out. And sometimes it even means that we test the meter. But it really depends on the circumstance and what happens during those steps. What we can tell with the new meters is we can see hourly consumption. So we can tell almost immediately whether it looks really unusual or whether it's following a normal consumption pattern. And I have to say, there's been a handful of these cases, but they have happened, and one of them actually happened to one of my good friends. He asked me to check into his bill because his consumption had gone up about 300%. And when I checked into it and got the billing history, his consumption started out at about 32 kilowatt hours per day, which is fairly normal for a residence his size. And over the past 7 years, it had decreased to the point where it was less than a fridge. And what had happened was that old meter had actually run slow to the point where it actually wasn't recording anymore. We have seen a few cases like that. So I guess my answer is it's not a straightforward answer. It's not an easy answer.
I think the biggest concern is the health hazard. Has hydro gone into, like we've heard all kinds of things that have happened to people because of the smart meters. Has hydro met those conditions? Have they looked into them?
We have had the meters independently tested by independent engineers. They've been signed and sealed, the results. The meter is very, very low power, and it's very, very infrequent transmission. It's less than almost anything else out there that's radio frequency based. In fact, an entire bank of meters is similar to a radio or a TV signal. It's very, very low. Most people have a radio or a television in their house already. We designed it that way because, of course, the power the meter uses comes on our side of the grid. So, of course, we've got almost 1.9 million, so we want to make sure that they run efficiently. But all those studies that we have done are available on our website, and I'd be happy to send them to council so that you have them at your disposal if you would like to see them or to distribute them.
Councilor Barrett?
I'm just thinking at all these questions that are the more scientific ones that I'm sure that want answered. But,
I have a copy of that letter, and we would be happy to respond to that letter in writing.
Okay, that's I guess it's the main thing is what frequencies of human biological systems did BC Hydro use and frequency interaction considerations.
We'll respond to that letter in writing. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a doctor, and I won't profess that I can, off the top of my head, answer those questions.
So citizens, if we decided that we didn't want
Excuse me,
the smart
I'm
meters,
sorry.
why?
The condition of hydro coming today is that the questions would only be asked by council. So you'll have to call hydro on your own after the.
Well, we're not
So
getting
on the note of you not being an engineer and not being all those things, that's, I mean, I think that's great, you're not. As just a citizen and not even an employee of hydro, I think with all the confusion around the safety code 6 and the time that it was probably dealt with, and then in our world today, which again, through consumption, you know, there's just a massive amount of everything out there, not just this transmission. As just a citizen of British Columbia, what do you feel about the, just between you going to your coffee shop and having 65 different Wi-Fi abilities to sign on to the power that they have to their meters, to everything, and are we ever going to have a balance in our world, or you know, what, like, will the safety code 6 definitely over time prove to be just false years ago?
Well, a couple of things. I think first of all, I mean, so from you're asking my personal perspective here. Well, radios have been around for well over a century, and that technology has been tested for decades, and in fact, there's been no conclusive evidence that there's any harm. You know, I've certainly done my own.
Excuse me, she's allowed her opinion, please.
I've done a considerable amount of research, and I've seen a considerable amount of research, and you know, I look to who's accountable. Who's accountable at the end of the day for providing information? I know there's a lot of misinformation out there, and when I look for the facts, I look for who can back them and who's accountable.
What about World Health Organization?
You know, I work with professional engineers who sign and seal their documents, right? They're accountable. They use highly sensitive equipment that has to be calibrated according to standards, has to be set up according to standards, and it has to be basically operated according to standards. And so, you know, we have done that over and over and over again. And I actually, you know, I can't separate my personal opinion from what I see being done to ensure that the system is, the information that we're sharing about the system is absolutely accurate. And I work some very smart people at BC Hydro who have put their name behind what they're saying and their careers behind what they're saying. And I believe those people, and I trust those people, and I can tell you when I'm at home in my living room, and I check to see how many Wi-Fi networks are operating, there's 3. And outside my door, I've got wireless parking meters, and the spark plugs in my car are generating radio frequency, and I've got, you know, like, it just...
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere, and what our engineers have explained to me, because I asked them, well, now I'm not an engineer, so tell me how this works. Does it add up? And so what they said to me, because it's wave technology, and I'm not an engineer, is basically the way it works is if you throw a pebble into a pond, it creates some ripples. If you throw a handful of pebbles into a pond, it doesn't create a tidal wave, it creates maybe a couple more ripples, but the way wave technology works is it cancels each other out. And you know, that's the best example I can share. That one worked for me, I got it. But it is an additive, and you know, it also drops off exponentially with distance. I looked up our local radio station just out of curiosity, Enderby in fact, and their transmissions are at 50,000 microwatts. 50,000. This is 2, and that's probably you know, that's actually an outside number, right? Because we never like to be wrong. And I wouldn't be standing up here telling you this if I didn't believe what I was saying was fact, and that I'm not personally convinced.
What about the routers?
Please.
I got a question for you.
Excuse me, if the audience can't be quiet, we'll be ending the meeting right now.
The
We
thing
told
was,
you before, this is not the time for the public to ask questions.
okay,
If you would like to ask questions, go to Hydro after.
I'm just saying that we never
Excuse
heard
me,
that
are you not
speak
listening?
beside you.
Are you
We
not?
couldn't hear.
Okay. Let's try and speak up.
So I just want to clarify again, you said that the time of day rate, so if I was running my hot tub, I'm not going to be charged for that time of day that I jumped into the hot tub and powered it up, correct? So that's this information that we're kind of getting.
Yes.
So a lot of people are,
There is no time of day rate. There is a step 2 rate that's been in place for over 5 years now,
right,
where if you use over a certain amount, you're going to pay a higher rate. So you get the first chunk of power relatively cheaply, and then you pay a little bit more after that. But there are no time of day rates that are being implemented.
so running my washing machine at a peak time, per se, because there is no peak time.
There is no peak time.
Okay. All right.
And you mentioned that we can actually be able to get onto your site and see what we're actually using,
Yes.
right? I'm not a computer guy, but is there any protection against hacking and
Absolutely.
that kind of thing? And
Yeah.
is there something that you can explain that maybe
Yeah.
there's folks here that might get what you're talking about?
Yeah, so the way the system works, and first of all, it has to be set up according to international and North American grid standards, right? So the security of grid infrastructure it's a national interest. And so we have to meet all the national standards, and in fact, we have people that work with national and international committees. The way the system works is that it's been designed assuming you can get into it. And then what happens is so a couple things about the meter. It does not store any customer information whatsoever. It stores your hourly consumption data, and it sends that to us every 8 hours. So by the time it's actually transmitted, it's 8 hours. It's old. It's encrypted similar to online banking. Then it goes through a number of layers of security. It's called a defense in depth system. So that we assume that you can get in there, and if you can get in there, then it basically has all these different pockets of isolation. So you would have to continually hack your way through to actually get into the back end. We've hired independent white hat hackers to test this, and we will continue to have it tested. They weren't able to get through the first layer to test it. These are people that work with the U.S. National Department of Energy. This is very, very sophisticated technology and people that we have behind the security of the grid. There is no way that the grid is connected to the internet. I have been asked that question, so I will say that the system, the data communication system, is not hooked up to the internet, nor is the grid. The only thing that goes to the internet is through an entirely different system, is your data, your consumption data that we post online. But you can't go through that, and get into the grid system. So we have gone through extensive lengths to protect what is basically your old hourly consumption data. And the bottom line is that the juice isn't really worth the squeeze on hacking into the system, right?
What options are you providing for people with electrical hypersensitivity that because of that are unable to work and so they're on low income?
There have been no decisions made yet with respect to accommodation. So we are working with customers who are on the hold list. We are calling people, and we are working with our customers on an individual basis.
Okay. Any final questions?
I just had to, if you have any kind of idea what the price might be for the opt-out, like end of year option.
I don't. There's a lot, so you saw through my presentation the amount of functionality that this provides in terms of automating different processes. So what I can tell you is the cost will include a lot more than meter reading because of the additional data that we have to collect to maintain our system. And I can't tell you what that will be yet or how that would potentially work. We don't have an opt-out program.
Just one last one. So if I wanted to move mine, that's my expense, right?
Yeah, you can move the meter at your cost.
Because it's a distancing, right? Farther away.
No, the reason you pay for it.
No, but I mean, if the meter was beside the head of my bed, and I
Yeah.
wanted to move it to the other side of the house,
Yeah.
where there's nobody living there, then it's a distance away from it also, that would reduce the,
It really depends on your individual configuration. So your meter box is part of your electrical infrastructure of your home, right? And so it depends how your home is set up. And of course, that's why you would pay for it. And today, that's, you know, basically any customer who requires customization of the grid pays for the full cost. And that could be moving your meter box, or that could be you want a pole move because it blocks your view, or you want a unique setup for your property, or you want an extension that's beyond what we would normally supply. All of those costs are paid in full by the customers who require them today.
Could you tell us when, you mentioned you sent a written response to the thermal graphics questions? Could you tell us when we might get that?
We have sent them in.
Oh,
I
okay.
did send a copy back. I can't say exactly, but we'll certainly
It'll be
get
like in the next couple of weeks?
the next couple of weeks, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, audience, for being so patient with us.
Next time, give us a shot at it.
You're welcome.
We have experts on our side too, that folks just nail her to the
Okay, I
wall.
will address that. My understanding of the process we're going to work with the committee was that your side was going to have a presentation prior to hydros. An email went out to the contact person I had on June 6th saying when hydro was coming. For some reason, that didn't happen. So if you would like to have a presentation on the same matter to council, we will certainly take an hour to listen to it.
Okay, we'll take you up on that.
Can we ask questions
So
to
based on that,
council?
we won't make a decision on it until after that presentation.
It would only be democratic to allow another voice, wouldn't it?
Yes? Yes,
Can we
ma'am.
ask questions to council?
No?
No?
Not now, we don't have time for it now, we're going into a regular council meeting.
That's convenient.
Will there be a question and answer
You didn't
period at this
represent all of
council?
our questions.
We've already said we will have a special meeting just for you to make presentations and ask questions.
No, and will there be a question and answer period at this council
If that's something
today?
you wish to have today? No.
Yes.
But if you want to make that presentation, so we've got both sides, well then, yes, we can include a question and answer period.
It would have to be something bigger than in here because there's a lot more people with a lot more questions that need to be answered.
Fair enough, we can work on finding another venue.
You represent us, remember.
The drill hall was offered to us in the past, I'm sure they would still
It's
do
your
that.
job.
It's actually different.
Forget by any chance a card.
Pardon me?
Do you have a card?
Okay, do. Hang on a second.
Give you mine, sir.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I know I have some. Would BC Hydro be willing to come to our presentation that will be holding in the next few weeks here in town at Drill Hall? We'll do our best to accommodate, but of course we have basically presentations within all around the province. Now on again to your province, and so we do our best to accommodate that. The other ones, but
Cindy.
we are coming up.
Is BC Hydro aware that we as human beings are electrical and we have our own volts and our own amps and our own frequencies, and that every organ in your body has a different frequency, and that your frequencies are interacting with our body's natural frequencies at a frequency that is far different than our own?
We have confirmed that the meters are safe with the provincial health officer.
The provincial health officer is not aware that we are electrical. The provincial health officer went to school 40 years ago, and he has no idea of the technology and the frequencies and how they affect our bodies today because he has not been educated.
Alrighty.
Right, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
If there's a meeting, we should make sure they understand we want them there.